We don't really think about it, but a baby's very first breath is one of the most violent, incredible, and dangerous moments of its entire life. It's not just a gasp of air. It's a complete biological rewiring that has to happen in seconds. And when it goes wrong, it is an absolute race against the clock. So let's get into this amazing story of survival.
So what is it? What truly makes that first breath a biological miracle? To figure that out, we're going to dive into the super high-stakes world of neonatal medicine, and we're going to see just what has to go perfectly right for a baby to make it outside the womb.
Okay, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at that incredible first breath itself. Then we'll talk about two major things that can go wrong: when the lungs aren't ready, which is called RDS, and when the circulation system fails to switch over, a condition called PPHN. After that, we'll get into the amazing story of the race for a cure and wrap up with the medical miracles that doctors use today.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Life's first breath. You have to understand, before a baby is born, it's living in a completely different world. The switch to breathing air is probably the single most dramatic thing any of our bodies will ever go through.
Okay, so check this out. On the left is life inside the womb, and on the right is life outside. It's like two totally different operating systems. In the womb, the lungs are filled with fluid. They're not doing anything yet. All the oxygen comes from the placenta. But at birth, bam, that first cry pushes all the fluid out, air rushes in, and the whole circulatory system has to reroute itself. The pressure in the lungs' blood vessels just plummets, and these special little shortcuts, these shunts that let blood bypass the lungs, they have to slam shut. It's a full system reboot in a matter of seconds.
And here's the absolute genius of the fetal setup. The body is smart. It knows where the good stuff needs to go. The most oxygen-rich blood, coming straight from the placenta, is cleverly routed directly to the most important organs, the brain and the heart. Meanwhile, the less oxygenated blood goes to the lower body and the lungs, which, aren't really doing much yet. It's just this incredible feat of natural engineering, prioritizing what matters most.
But what happens when the lungs just aren't ready for that traumatic switch? For a lot of premature babies, this is a huge, huge problem, and it leads to a condition we call respiratory distress syndrome, or RDS for short.
The entire problem of RDS boils down to one critical substance, surfactant. Honestly, the best way to think of it is as a kind of biological soap. It's this slippery mix of fats and proteins that coats the inside of all the tiny little air sacs in the lungs, and its one and only job is to keep those sacs from sticking together and collapsing every time you breathe out. Without it, breathing is just almost impossible.
And this is the perfect way to picture it. Imagine trying to blow up a balloon that's all wet and sticky on the inside. Every single time you stop blowing, it just glues itself shut. That is exactly what a preemie with RDS is fighting against. Every single breath is this monumental effort to pop open the lungs, only to have them collapse again, over and over. It's exhausting. And just to give you an idea of the scale of this, for the tiniest, most vulnerable babies, those born at less than 24 weeks, the chance of them having RDS is somewhere between 95 and 98%. It's almost a certainty. Their little bodies just haven't had time to make enough of that critical surfactant.
So you can see the difference pretty clearly here. On the left, a healthy lung. The air sacs are open, they're inflated, and they're easily exchanging oxygen. But on the right, that's an RDS lung. The air sacs are collapsed. The medical term for that is atelectasis. This makes the lungs incredibly stiff and hard to inflate, and it totally messes up gas exchange, leading to dangerously low oxygen levels, which is called hypoxia. So the lungs can be the problem. But sometimes the lungs themselves are actually okay, but the circulatory system fails to make that critical switch we talked about earlier. And that leads to our second huge challenge: persistent pulmonary hypertension of the newborn, or PPHN. PPHN is basically when the baby's body gets stuck in fetal mode. That super high blood pressure in the lungs' arteries, which was totally normal in the womb, just persists after birth. And that's a life-threatening problem, because it means blood keeps taking the old shortcuts, bypassing the lungs entirely. Yeah, the highway bypass analogy is perfect. Those fetal shunts are like a temporary road built to get around construction. But once the main road, the lungs, are open for business, the bypass is supposed to close. In PPHN, it just refuses to close. Blood keeps taking the easy way out, which means it completely skips the lungs. And the result? That blood never ever picks up oxygen. And this is a really, really dangerous situation. On average, a baby diagnosed with PPHN has a 7.6% chance of not surviving.
And in really complex cases, that number can be a lot higher. It just shows you how absolutely critical that circulatory switch is.
Now, for decades, both of these conditions, RDS and PPHN, were basically a death sentence. So this next part is the story of the brilliant and sometimes desperate race to figure this out. It's a story of tragedy, keen observation, and just incredible scientific breakthroughs.
This timeline just lays it all out. It really kicks off in 1959, when two doctors, Avery and Mead, first figured out that babies dying from this were missing something in their lungs. Then in 1963, a major tragedy brought this to the world's attention when President Kennedy's newborn son died from it. And that's when the breakthroughs really started. 1972 was huge. Doctors discovered that giving steroids to the mom could actually help the baby's lungs mature faster. Then in 1980, Dr. Fujiwara in Japan has this stunning first success treating babies with a surfactant made from animal lungs. And it all leads up to the 1990s, when the FDA finally approves modern surfactant therapies and another total game changer for PPHN, a gas called inhaled nitric oxide.
And that brings us to today. So let's look at the incredible tools that are now standard of care, saving countless babies, but let's also talk about the challenges that are still out there.
So, the modern toolkit is a direct result of all that history. We've got corticosteroids to give to moms to prep the lungs ahead of time. We have that exogenous, meaning external surfactant that can be put right into the baby's lungs. For PPHN, we have inhaled nitric oxide, a special gas that relaxes the blood vessels just in the lungs. And of course, all of this is backed up by incredibly sophisticated ventilators that do the breathing for them.
And here's what those surfactants actually are. You can see brands like Survanta and Infisurf, which come from cows, or Curosurf, which comes from pigs. It sounds a little strange, but they're basically extracts from animal lungs that contain all those critical fats and proteins that a premature baby is missing. And they're dosed with incredible precision based on the baby's exact weight.
But the job isn't done. Not by a long shot. The whole game is changed. Now that we can save so many of these babies who would have died just a few decades ago, the new challenge is ensuring high-quality survival. The focus now is on minimizing long-term problems, like chronic lung damage, and making sure these kids have the best possible chance at a normal, healthy life.
And after all the science, all the physiology, I think this quote just brings it all home. It's a reminder that behind every one of these medical miracles is a person, a team of people, working under unbelievable pressure. And of course, there's a family just holding on to hope. It's really a powerful thought to end with. What does it take, not just scientifically, but emotionally, to make sure that that first breath is just the start of a lifetime of them?